the preoperative, perioperative care, and principles of laparoscopy, robotics, and day care surgery. So let's proceed with the presentation. So what is preoperative and perioperative care? Preoperative care is the time period between the decision to have surgery and beginning of the surgical procedure. It is the psychologic and physiologic preparation of a patient before a surgery. And the term perioperative means is an integrated care across the full patient pathway before, during, and after surgery. That is from the patient admission and from the investigations and the surgery and the post-operative period. Then, what is the aim of a preoperative evaluation? The aim is not to screen broadly for undiagnosed disease, but to identify and quantify any comorbidity that may affect the operative outcome. The stress of a major surgery can lead to increased oxygen demand by at least 40%. So, the physiological changes occur during perioperative period. They are the cytokine release related inflammatory changes, and then the endocrine changes, and the hypercoagulability and redistribution of fluid between compartments. So, the purpose of a careful preoperative planning is to minimize the unwanted effect of these physiological changes. So, for everything to occur in a good way, one must plan. So, what is the preoperative plan for the best patient outcome? That is, one must gather and record all relevant information. Then we should optimize the patient condition. That is, if the patient is diabetic, we should reduce his sugar level by giving either insulin or oral hypoglycemic agents. If he is hypertensive, we must give anti-hypertensive drugs to reduce his hypertension. Then one must choose a surgery that offers minimal risk and maximal benefit to the patient. For example, we should use laparoscopic surgery in case of an obese patient. Then one must anticipate and plan for adverse events. That is, we must ask previous history regarding any succinyl choline apnea. So must we can plan accordingly for such adverse events. Next, we must adequately hydrate the patient. We should give nutritional supplementation, and we should advise the patient to do exercise. Next comes the patient assessment. Just like we do a routine examination of the patient, everything begins with history taking, followed by examination, then examination specific to the surgery, and next comes the investigations. So, what is history taking? We all know that history taking is an art. Just like we have studied in our undergraduate and postgraduate days, it comprises of presenting complaints, present history, past history, medical history, surgical history, family history, social history, and menstrual history in case of females. So, what does Bailey and Love says? Bailey and Love says the history taking must comprise of four components. That is, the one must listen to the patient. Initially, the patient will tell what is complaints. That is what is the problem. That is open questions. Then comes one must we should clarify. If the patient deviates from the main complaints, we must clarify what does the patient expect. That is the closed questions. Then comes the narrowing our diagnosis. That is the focused questions. We must focus our questions in such a way that we can arrive at a differential diagnosis. Next comes the questions regarding to the comorbidities, that is the fixed questions. So these are some of the important questions that one must ask during asking a past medical history. In cardiovascular examination, we must inquire about ischemic heart disease, that is the history of any angina, myocardial infarction. Next, the hypertension, heart failure, any dysrhythmias, peripheral history of peripheral vascular disease, any history of deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary disease. In respiratory system, we must inquire about any chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, history of asthma and respiratory infections. Next is the gastrointestinal systems, that is the peptic ulcer disease and gastroesophageal reflux disease or presence of liver disease. In genitourinary tract, we must ask about any history of renal dysfunction and the history of urinary tract infection. In neurological, we must ask about history of epilepsy, cerebrovascular accidents, transient ischemic attacks, and psychiatric disorders and cognitive function, that is dementia. In endocrine disease, the important things one must remember is about diabetes, thyroid function, pheochromocytoma, in porphyrias. In locomotor system, one must ask about osteoarthritis, inflammatory arthropathy such as rheumatoid arthritis. The other history, we must ask about history of human immunodeficiency virus, hepatitis, tuberculosis, malignancy, and any history of allergy. In previous surgery, one must ask about problems encountered in previous surgery. That is, any history of intra-abdominal adhesions which is faced during a laparoscopic surgery. Then family history of problems with anesthesia such as succum, methonium, apnea. Such histories are very, very important while managing a patient. Then come the examination. In examination, we must follow the standard rules. The patient should be treated with utmost respect and dignity. The patient consent must be obtained prior to examination. A female attendant must be kept by our side while examining female patients. Examination must be done from head to toe. So the examination can further be divided into general examination. That is, any positive findings, even if not related to the proposed procedure, should be explored further. Next comes the examination related to the surgery. In examination related to the surgery, we should assess the type and site of surgery, the complication occurring due to the underlying pathology, the clinical findings, specific imaging or investigation related to the pathology for which the surgery is proposed. Also, one must explore the suitability of the patient for the proposed surgical option and vice versa should also be assessed. Then comes the systemic examination, that is the any comorbidities and extent of limitation of each organ function must be examined. Then examination specific to the surgery. So these are some of the very important examination one must look in general examination. In general, from head to toe, one must look for anemia, jaundice, cyanosis, nutritional status, whether the patient is ill-built, well-built, or moderately built. Then comes the look for sources of infection, any infected tooth, any ill-fitted dentures, look for the feet, any leg ulcers, any discoloration. In cardiovascular system, we must examine about the pulse, look for the volume of the pulse, the rhythm of the pulse, whether it is regular or irregular. Then look for the blood pressure, heart sounds, any bruit, and look for any peripheral edema, which are signs of fluid overload. In the respiratory system, one must look for the respiratory rate, the effort, the chest movements, look for the percussion notes, and listen to the breath sounds, and measure the oxygen saturation level in room air. Then the gastrointestinal system, we must look for the presence of abdominal masses, ascites, the bowel sounds, look for hernia, which is the external genitalia, which is the 10th quadrant, and the airway assessment. The airway assessment will be dealt later. Coming to the investigations, the National Institute of Healthcare and Excellence UK guidelines lay out the investigations needed for various categories of surgery. Not all surgeries require the same set of investigations. The investigations should be done according to the patient's age, his comorbidities, nature of surgery, and the risk involved. In general, these are the following investigations that are routinely done. One is the full blood count, and next is urea and electrolytes, and the electrocardiography, that is the ECG, and the chest radiograph, the clotting screen, that is the bleeding time, clotting time, prothrombin time, APTT test, and next the urine analysis, and then comes the blood glucose and the HbA1c levels, the arterial blood gas, the liver function test, and beta HCG in case of pregnant women, and other investigation. The other investigations are CT scans, tumor markers pertaining to the particular disease for which the surgery is offered. Next, we move on to the specific preoperative problems and management of diseases particular to a system. Before beginning to a particular system, one must do a baseline organ function test to assess the capacity of that system. After assessing the capacity, Either we must directly proceed if the capacity is very good, or if it is poor, we must optimize by means of medications, lifestyle changes, and referral to a specialist. First, we can see about the cardiovascular system. Cardiovascular disease are the leading cause of death in the industrialized world. In perioperative period, the cardiovascular complications are very frequent. Therefore, it is important to identify the patients at risk for major adverse cardiovascular event. This is an important word. That is a major adverse cardiovascular event, and we should make appropriate arrangements to reduce the risk. There are several risk assessment tools for the stratification of the cardiovascular portion of the anesthetic risk. And one such index is the Goldman Cardiac Risk Index. The Goldman Cardiac Risk Index takes into account the history, whether the patient has a MI within 6 months, it has given a points, it has 10 points. Then age more than 70 years will get 5 points. Like that, history, physical examination, electrocardiogram, and other factors are all assessed and the points are plotted. And based on the points, the probability of life-threatening complications can be analyzed. Next comes the important risk index, which is the revised cardiac risk index, that is the Lee criteria. The Lee criteria takes into account a prior history of transient ischemic attack or a CVA, and diabetes mellitus, which require insulin therapy, and serum creatinine of more than 2 milligram per deciliter, any history of coronary artery disease, and high risk surgery. Each points are given a single point, and if a patient has a score of 0 to 1, is categorized as a low risk, and a score of 2 as moderate risk, and a score of more than 3 comes under high risk. Next, we move on to the stress test. What is stress test? Stress test is used to evaluate the coronary reserve in a patient with ischemic heart disease. The various types of stress test include stress ECG, stress echocardiogram, and stress myocardial scintigraphy. Though the standard exercise stress test with or without thallium, the stress test is done using thallium for perfusion imaging, can be limited by the functional capacity of the patient. If the patient is unable to do exercise to an acceptable level, he may require pharmacologic stress testing with the drug called as dipyridamole. Therefore, the drug used for pharmacologic stress testing is dipyridamole. The perfusion defects identified by such test can be further assessed via thallium or a dobutamine-induced stress test, following which we must do functional assessment using an echocardiogram. Therefore, these tests have a high negative predictive value but a relatively low positive predictive value. We all know that high negative predictive value means if the test is negative, the patient doesn't have any evidence of ischemia. Then comes the measurement of fractional coronary flow reserve. It can be done using angiography by a help of pressure wire. It is useful to detect the coronary lesions that have the largest impact on myocardial perfusions.